What's going on, YouTubes? I have an ATC 70 right here. I believe that this is an 84. And I recently did an axle bearing replacement on this machine. This was a very complex job. This was a hard job. I'm pretty sure that the bearings I pulled out were the original ones, which means they had been in there for 40 years. And 40 years of corrosion meant that this thing did not want to come apart. This project was a bear. However, knowing what I know now would make this job significantly easier the next time around. And there's several other YouTubers that have created videos on how to do this. And I'm not going to say that their method is incorrect. However, the way that I approached it, I believe is significantly easier. And I want to share some tools, some techniques, some part numbers for things that you might need to replace, and how I went about doing it. So I'll start in on that now. So first things first, if you're planning this job out, it does not hurt at all to get liberal with some penetrating oil. I would get some penetrating oil and I would spray around here, the axle nut. I would spray liberally in here, behind the sprocket here, and any other joints along. Now, some videos that I've seen, basically, the guy tried to send the axle out that way. So he tried to send it out to the left. And what he did was you pull this nut and you pull the axle flange off, and then this axle cover, and then he made a device to try to pull this brake drum off. Now the problem with that brake drum is that's a cast iron brake drum, and it's got a spline sleeve about that long, and that thing had no interest in coming off whatsoever. The way that I did it was I sent the axle out this way. So I sent it to the right. And in order to do that, I had to break this flange in here for the sprocket. It's a much smaller flange. This sprocket carrier is made of aluminum, so it's not going to get as rusted and as bound up as the basically steel on cast iron wood on the other side, and I felt like that made it much more easier to go about. Now, all this stuff came apart pretty easily. This axle cover was a bear to get off. It did not want to move whatsoever. The successful way that I found to remove it was a lot of heat. This MAP gas torch came in quite handy. I heated this thing very, very liberally. And then what I was finally able to do was just get a little paint scraper like this and nudge it in there and pound it in. And I finally got that paint scraper in. And then I moved my way up to like a small punch, to a bigger punch. And every time I was spraying it with penetrating oil, and then I'd send it back in, pound it out again, send it back in, and I just kept doing that and doing that and doing that and heating it and moving it back and forth, and very, very slowly I was able to get that off. Now, the next problem was, how am I going to pound this axle out through the carrier here? If you take a hammer and you wail on that, you will 100% mess up those threads. Guaranteed. You'll probably there's a chance that you could ruin the axle by doing that. And that is something that you do not want to do. What I found best was I took a large sprocket like this, or large socket, should I say, with an adapter, with a pair of vice grips, and I put it right over this wheel carrier like that. That gave me a great place to hammer on, and it did no damage to the corresponding parts. Now, to move on, in order to send this axle through and to break this joint right here, the sprocket carrier with the axle, this thing had to be heavily heated. And I mean really heated. I had that torch on that thing for probably 10 minutes. And the problem is, if you heat that up, there are some components. There's some rubber components on the backside that you're most likely going to destroy. They are most likely going to look like this after you're done. Okay, there's a little like plastic cover here. And there's some sprocket, they call them sprocket dampers that are in behind there. Those are most likely going to get destroyed in this process. Now here's the good part. Number one, these sprocket dampers were in pretty bad shape as it is. So it was about time to replace them anyways. And this piece right here, this wasn't very expensive. This was, I don't know, like 10 or 15 bucks. And actually, there's the part number for it right there. You can still buy it, still readily available today. For the dampers, there was just like a universal kit that I bought off eBay. If you look up ATC 70 sprocket dampers, you'll find lots of links for that. They're not a rare part or anything. But yeah, in the heating process, those components got destroyed. So I guess that is the only negative part about sending the axle that way versus sending it this way. So once I got everything out, as you can see, these bearings were beyond toast. They were really bad. You know, the bearing replacement process is pretty straightforward. It's just like replacing bearings in a dirt bike wheel. You basically send them out with a punch from the opposite side. So if I'm removing that bearing, I'm going to take a punch and just pound it out that way. You know, nothing too crazy there, but just the axle removal part was definitely the hardest, and that's why I'm trying to make this video to sum up exactly what I did here. While you're in here, brake shoe replacement, probably not a bad idea. I got just a standard brake shoes here. There's the part number if you want to look at that. And let's see, what else? Oh, these nuts. You probably want to replace those nuts. Those are pretty cheap. I'll give you the part number right there. And then on this one, the threads were a little boogered up. They were just a little bit rusted. I didn't really feel confident putting a brand new nut on those. So you're probably going to want to run like a tap over them, or not a tap, a die or a thread chaser or something like that. And if you're going to look that up, the thread pitch for that, it's an M14 by 1.5. So this really cleaned those right up. The nuts went on silky smooth afterwards. And you know, when I put everything back together, I put a liberal amount of grease. And it went back together smooth. But again, I just figured I want to talk through this and talk over some of the highlights, you know, what I did to make the job a little bit easier. Because again, if I had known it, it would have cut the job in half. It just it was miserable. I sat here pounding the axle both ways multiple times until I came up with a plan that it was going to be much easier to go that way with it. So anyways, I hope this helps you guys. I wish I could have done like a, done it in true time, but I just didn't have the time to film it as I went along. So I just figured I'd sum up my thoughts in the end here. But anyways, if you are doing this job, I wish you luck. If you have any comments, feel free to throw them in the comments section down below. I can try to help you out. And anyways, right on, guys. We'll talk to you.